name is Sophia Tapko, and my design thinking project relates to potential issues I foresee in the Spanish foreign language classroom. The problem I chose to undertake in this process is what opportunities exist for students in K-12 schools to practice speaking and listening outside of the language learning classroom. With that in mind, let's jump into the process I undertook this semester. My first step in this project was to empathize. The initial idea for this project came from my personal frustrations that I've had in preparing for my Spanish praxis test, as well as various family members who are in the process of learning Spanish and who have expressed similar frustrations due to an inability to practice speaking and listening at no cost in a way that works with their busy schedules. As a future Spanish educator, this seemed like a great place to start. From empathizing, I was able to define my problem. World language Spanish educators need a way to offer students the opportunity to practice speaking skills outside of the classroom, but in an affordable, ideally no cost, asynchronous manner. Once I had defined my problem, the real fun began: ideating. In a limitless, ideal world, I would have students play phone tag with native speakers to participate in authentic, interpersonal communication. Because we don't live in an ideal world, though, I figured I should brainstorm some practical solutions as well. For one, textbooks often have online speaking practice that can be done at home with online access. Second, in their 2010 study, Demoy and Kukulska-Holm actually did use mobile phones as a way for students to practice different grammar points and practice real-world conversations. Additionally, I'm familiar with Duolingo through my own endeavors to learn Portuguese. And finally, my fiance is actually taking Spanish classes at KU right now, and he regularly uses VoiceThread. Clearly, there were a lot of options to be considered as I moved into the next phase: prototyping. When beginning the process of prototyping, I had to consider the use of homework in the foreign language classroom. Wallinger in the 2000 Foreign Language Annals argues that homework requiring higher order thinking skills, as opposed to rote mechanical exercises, is more beneficial to students. By having students practice speaking at home, they are not only engaging in higher order thinking skills, i.e. producing the language itself, but it also allows students to practice privately. Research from Elaine and Michael Horwitz and Joanne Cope in their 1986 Modern Language Journal article, Foreign Language Classroom Anxiety, shows that language learning, specifically practicing listening and speaking skills, can be anxiety-producing. Sumita's article in the 2012 Peaceful Journal agrees with this when it notes that the most common source of anxiety in the realm of language learning is being asked to produce the language in front of peers and the teacher and feeling unprepared to do so. By asking students to practice their speaking and listening in private, they're in a lower stakes environment that should considerably mitigate their anxiety. I looked at about 2.5 different prototypes for my ideas. First, I created an account with Duolingo for Spanish. Second, I created a test to play with the account I created on VoiceThread. Finally, I anticipated prototyping textbook access, but because I 1. Lacked a textbook and 2. Lacked online access to said textbook, I decided that probably wouldn't be the best idea. I was nervous to prototype Duolingo and VoiceThread because there are benefits and detriments to both. In my prototyping of VoiceThread, I quickly learned that I was none too pleased. While it is the oral discussion board that I initially thought would be most beneficial to students, VoiceThread is so difficult to use technologically speaking that the negatives significantly outweigh the positives. Dae-Sung Kim in 2013 led a team of researchers in a study comparing mobile technologies, of which one was VoiceThread, that showed significant technological unfriendliness in regards to VoiceThread. And although the study is 4 years old, technological advances still have not proved to be terribly effective for the software. Of course, I didn't know that when I initially prototyped it by creating my own test, VoiceThread, and asking my sister and her roommates to comment on it. Pardon the cheesiness on some of their comments. I'm good friends with them. They didn't quite understand that it was for school. There is a link to this prototype in the description of this video if you're wanting to check it out. On the other hand, Duolingo already is super easy to use and it's readily accessible on most any smartphone. It does have its downsides though that should be acknowledged. In the International Journal of Foreign Language Teaching in 2014, Stephen Krashen argued that Duolingo promotes learning of a language as opposed to acquisition of one. The difference being that learning is a much more conscious process than acquisition, which emphasizes a more natural approach to language learning. I prototyped Duolingo on myself by using their programmed bots, which allow one to engage in simple conversations. It seemed to meet my needs well, and while the transcriptions weren't always 100% accurate, they were accurate enough to move into the testing stage. I chose to test Duolingo on my sister, her roommate, and my fiance. My sister's roommate and my fiance both speak at an intermediate level, and my sister has an advanced Spanish proficiency. The level of Duolingo is novice high to intermediate mid, depending on the theme one chooses. Let's go ahead and take a look at one of the sample conversations that we had.
Hola. ¿Quiere una mesa?
Sí, por favor, yo quiero una mesa.
¿Quiere esta mesa?
No, no quiero esta mesa. ¿Hay una otra mesa?
Esa mesa es terrible. Lo siento. ¿Y esta mesa está bien?
Sí, esta mesa es mucho más mejor.
Bien. ¿Qué quiere beber?
Even though that's only a sample of the conversation, the effect is clear. The conversation is clear, low stakes, and allows for both listening and reading comprehension practice. With this experience and my tester's feedback in mind, I revisited my initial problem. This need for students of world languages to practice speaking that language outside of the classroom. I had two stipulations that I wanted to focus on: no cost and asynchronous. While Duolingo does meet my desire for a medium that's free, it isn't technically asynchronous. Because there's no moderator or any other participant, Duolingo is more of an independent practice than it is asynchronous. The software also presents the issue of how do students submit an artifact to provide that they have completed the speaking exercise? To try to resolve this issue, I returned to prototyping and tried to audio record the conversation, but to no avail. The recording stopped when I hit the record button in the Duolingo app. I also found out that the camera stops recording once you exit out of that app. Finally, I came to the conclusion that screenshots of the conversation may be the best option, because they also allow for reflection on the conversation in class and a discussion as to other possible appropriate responses. So even though it may be unorthodox, it seems like my solution based on this process is actually a screenshot of a conversation, which is definitely not what I was expecting at this project's start. In fact, much of the design thinking process was unexpected, especially the many stages of revision, like changing my problem, revisiting prototyping, having unexpected discoveries in the initial prototyping stage with my first solution choice. Overall, though, I learned that design thinking is more about being flexible than finding the right answer on the first try. The process I undertook over the course of this project, while exceedingly frustrating at times, has overall been a really positive introduction to design thinking, and it makes me more confident in tackling problems in the future when I'll be on my own. I can now say that when I'm the head designer of my own learning environment, I know exactly what tool I'll be using from my toolbox. Thanks.